Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Building Better Business Practice Management webinar series. Tonight's topic is quality and safety with KPC herbs. My name is Natalia Morrison, and I'm the Director of Communications for FASOMA. And tonight's free webinar is sponsored and powered, obviously, by the Florida State Oriental Medical Association. And I'm so excited that you guys are here because tonight we have, of course, KPC herbs with us. And we have Rosemary, who is the Operations and Marketing Manager at KPC, and Dr. Christine Chang, who currently is also teaching at the Yosan University and Emperor's College in California. So before they go with their presentation tonight, I wanted to go over some housekeeping with you. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a couple of icons, and one of them is the chat box, which is where you can communicate with your colleagues, your friends, share links. And the next icon is a Q&A box, and that's where you're going to submit your questions. So during tonight's presentation, whenever you have a question, no matter how big or small, submit it into the Q&A section. I'll see it and I will immediately bring it up to Dr. Chang and Rosemary so they can immediately address your questions. All right, so without further ado, Rosemary and Dr. Chang, thank you for being here, ladies.
Thank you, Natasha, for having us. Well, thank you guys for this opportunity and for tuning in to, for me to share about herbal safety and quality control. Before I begin the presentation, I want to share a short video, a 4-minute video, to give you a glimpse into our manufacturing factory. So it gives you an insight into what we do, how we manufacture our product, so that when you see the slides, you'll see it more tangibly and be able to see sort of the quality control in a live session too. So let me share my screen and I'll show you the video. Okay, so. One second. There you go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. So I will play the video and then enjoy.
We don't drink coffee here. We drink herbal tea. We produce Chinese herbal remedies of the highest standards, integrating professional research, testing, quality control, and innovative development with the wisdom of Chinese herbology, initiating a revolution of natural healthcare. We specialize in development, research, and manufacture of Chinese herbal products widely used in medical treatment, daily nourishment, and preventive healthcare. Kaiser Pharmaceutical and Botanical are professional manufacturers of Chinese herbal products based in Tainan, Taiwan. Starting as a Chinese herbal dispensary in Guanmiao, Tainan in 1892, the business is now managed by the 4th generation and still continuing. We are committed to carrying on our heritage for generations to share with the world the wonderful gifts of nature. We strive to become a safe and trusted choice of health enhancement for every person in the world. The production facility is certified under the most stringent standards in the world. Our high-quality standards are set starting from importation of raw materials for one reason alone, and that is to bring you safe products. Every morning, we start a busy day transporting sacks and bags of raw materials from the unloading docks. All our materials are tested through DNA identification to ensure species authentication. Once laboratory testing is launched, every material is tested through, at minimum, the 3 basic gatekeepers of characteristics verification, microscopic identification, and verification of physical and chemical properties to ensure the safety, efficacy, and consistency of the materials. production of Chinese herbal products comprises three major steps: extraction, concentration, and granulation. The active ingredients of the herbs are extracted and concentrated at low temperatures before going through our patented volatile essential oil extraction technology, which seals in the essence of the herbs. Complex testing procedures are implemented during production to ensure that all semi-finished products meet the standards. Products must go through every quality control procedure before being transported to storage. The linear and fully automated production lines are the key to minimizing the chance of cross-contamination. Our ISO 17025 certified laboratory is an assurance of the safety and efficacy of our products. As an expert in Chinese herbal products, our pursuit of excellence includes participating in blind tests, which compare our products to those of other brands. This is our commitment to becoming the best in the Chinese herbal industry. Our heritage of 5 generations speaks of our trust in nature's healing power and our commitment to healthy living. We are born in nature, are raised by nature, and live on nature's bounty. We preserve nature's way to bring you healthy living the natural way.
So that is a short video, and I'm going to dig right in for the presentation. So again, what you saw is our factory in Taiwan. And if you guys ever have a chance to visit Taiwan, please feel free to reach out to me. I can definitely connect you with someone that can give you a walkthrough and a tour of our factories, and you'll have a first live experience of how this herbal product started from raw materials into a finished products. This presentation is important in the sense that I know there may be some practitioners listening or some people who may just be new to herbs. And sometimes the misconception here in the US is that people don't understand how herbs are actually go through a lot of stringent testings and processes before they become a finished products. So this presentation will walk you through the different standards and different processes to ensure the quality of the herbs. So a little bit about KPC history, which is what you just saw in the video. KPC started 5 generations ago, and it actually started from my great-great-great-great-grandfather, who decided he wanted to provide herb trays and best herbs for the people in his village. Our first, I call it the pharmacy, that was built in 1892 in Guanmiao was started by my grandmother, which is still exists today and is quite a nostalgia to be able to see that. In 1969, KP built our first factory, and this factory was in also the southern part of Tainan. However, because the changing dynamic and the cultures and the standards of the government have raised for manufacturing Chinese herbs, we knew we had to build a new factory, and this factory unfortunately no longer exists. In 1984, we built our Kaiser Pharmaceutical. We're not related to Kaiser Permanente, but we call ourselves the KP. This is where all of our herbal products are made nowadays. Because of the increasing demands and natural supplements and herbs, and also people want to be able to take care of their health, we have seen an increased demand with OEM products. So these are products that customers want us to manufacture for them. So we built a new factory called the BT or Biotonical in 2003. So now both of these factories exist in Taiwan. One is in Yongkang, which is KP, and then the other one is in Tainan's Science Park district. Both of these are open for visitors. So if you guys are ever here or ever in Taiwan, let us know, and we would love to take you around to show you our factory. So KPC has worldwide distribution center. We are one of the top exporters in Taiwan. We're only able to become this strong exporters because of our stringent testings and requirements that we have for our products. And we actually meet the standards of all these different countries that we export to, because all these different countries have different standards and requirements. So the certifications that we hold, well, we have quite a number of certifications. The three that I believe is the most important for us to focus on is the TGA, the NSF CGMP, and also the TAF. As you see on the top of the slide, there is a GMP, CGMP, and a PICS GMP. So let me talk about that first, and then I'll dig into why these three certificates are relevant and important. GMP stands for Good Manufacturing Practice. So that means that when a government agency like FDA comes, they evaluate each step of your manufacturing process. The first question that I get asked all the time is, I'm concerned about cross-contamination. Well, GMP ensures that there's no cross-contamination, because your testing process, your cleaning process, your manufacturing process has to adhere by a certain standards and requirement by these agencies. They want to ensure that the products you produce are consistent of a certain quality. So how is CGMP better than GMP? So CGMP is a certificate came from National Scientific Foundation, NSF. C stands for current, so that means current good manufacturing practice. The CGMP is a level up from GMP. The current good manufacturing means that all of your manufacturing process and your testing standards are with the most up-to-date standards. So in a sense, the GMP certificate is great, but the CGMP certificate is another level up because the expectations are higher and the expectations are more stringent and also more up-to-date. So NSF is a great certificate for companies, herbal industry companies to have, herbal manufacturers to have. Now there's also the TGA. I would say TGA is the hardest certificate to pass out of all these certifications. TGA certification is a certification that came from Australia. And you may be wondering, why Australia? Well, Australia actually evaluates herbal product as a pharmaceutical product. So that means the certification is extremely difficult to pass, because they are looking at herbal product the same level and the same kind of standard as a pharmaceutical product. So you can imagine when we get evaluated, when an evaluator comes to our manufacturing plant, what kind of nerve we would have, or how we showcase that we are producing the safest, the most effectivest, and the highest quality of herbs. The third certification that I will focus on this page is the TAF, which meets the ISO 17025 standard. ISO stands for International Standard Organization. So this ensures, TAF ensures that your laboratory and also your testing methodology are meeting the international standards that and the requirements that is recognized worldwide. Think about it this way. If I say I'm giving you a certification, what we call the certificate of analysis with the testing results, why should you believe me? No one is verifying this just because you said your testing is doing the best it can be and producing the great test result. How can I believe you? How do I know these tests are actually what it states it is. This is where TFA comes in. They look at your testing methodologies. They look at your testing process. They evaluate your lab to make sure the results you produce for your herbs are meeting the international standards. So our certificate of analysis that we produce batch to batch is not just recognized by ourselves, it's actually recognized worldwide. So the 3 certificate that I will always ask people to look at it when you are purchasing herbal supplements from your practitioner or practitioner from a distributor is the TGA, the NSF, and the TAF. So next, so this is how our manufacturing process works. As you can see, the line might be really thin, but this is a linear manufacturing process. In any good manufacturing process, your manufacturing process has to be linear because this avoids cross-contamination. Some company tests the raw materials and then they maybe test the semi-finished product and the finished product. But at KP, we do more than that. We test the raw materials when it comes in, but we also test the raw materials before we put it into process. We also test it before we clean it and prepare it for granulation and also decoction. So there are each step of the way, we actually run a test before we move on to the next step. So our KP, our testing standards are higher than most other companies. So this is what you should be looking for, the testing standards and the qualities of each of the vendors or the herbal supplement companies you're using or taking herbs from. So what type of testing do we go through? As you saw in the video, there are 3 basic gatekeepers that we have. We obviously have to first identify species. So why is identifying species so important? In our experience, herbs has actually been identified incorrectly many, many times. So because people rely on physical appearances, but some herbs, you really can't tell the difference when you just look at it physically. So that's not enough. And without the right species or the right type of herbs, how can you produce the right type of finished products? And how is the patient going to get better or take care of the overall health care when the product is, when the species of the herb is not correct? So in addition to physical appearance, we look at it under microscope. So that's where we look for certain presences, certain appearances, or certain characteristics that a raw herb or raw material should have. And that's what we call the microscopic analysis. But to us, this is not enough. This is still looking at it superficially on the species that we're using. We want to dig more. So we have, as we grow as a company, now we have developed another methodology called chemical analysis. So this is like humans. Humans all have DNAs. You have your own DNA and I have my own DNA, and also fingerprints. So does herbs. So herbs, it has something that we call the standard reference, which is something you saw on the left-hand side. So we extract the herbs out to get their fingerprints, to get their DNA. Then we extract out the products, the raw materials that we have, and we analyze it and see, do these fingerprints match? Without it matching, then we have a potential for being identified or identifying the wrong species. So that's where we go in depth to not only look at it physically or under microscope, but also through chemical analysis. And this is just giving you a reference or a glimpse into our standard reference cabin. So all these standard references are through Chinese governments where they have done extensive testings and experiences identifying the DNA and the fingerprints of the herbs. And these are the standard references that we use to identify the species of each of the herbs that we use. So this is a machine that we look at it under, or we use to identify the the DNA of the herbs, which is called the thin layer chromatography. Usually it's just referenced as TLC. So on the left-hand side, if you see this green glass or green slip, on the left-hand side is the standard reference. On the right-hand side is the testing samples. So we run this and you can see where they're having a little brackets side by side, left to right. They're identifying saying, yes, this DNA match. We got the right guy, we got the right herbs. So TLC is very useful in ensuring that we qualify the herbs. So we're saying yes or no. Is this the right herb that we are using? But to us, that's not enough. So why is KPC's herbs or KP's herb effective and efficient? Well, we also quantify it using UPLC. So UPLC is an active ingredient indicator machine. So every herb has an active ingredient to know and to do a certain things to have a certain efficacy. So when you don't have an active ingredient in the herb is actually not useful. I'll give you a situation. There was a time in the long past where we have purchased a batch of renshen. Of course, under microscopic analysis, physical analysis, it all looks great. This is the right herb. This has the identity that it needs to have. Under TLC, we quantify it and we say, correct, we identify the right renshen that we have. But here comes a problem. When we put it under UPLC to test to see if it has an active ingredient that the renshen needs to have, there was none. So what happened? The vendor that we partner with extracted out all of the active ingredients and sold it and gave us an herb that has no active ingredient. So if you're not using a UPLC to test for active ingredient to quantify it, how do you know this herb is actually using for you? So TLC is used to qualify the herb and UPLC is to quantify the herbs. So this is all the work that we do before we put the herbs for cooking and start the manufacturing processes. So this is quite extensive work to ensure that the quality, safety, and efficacy of the herbs you take, of the finished product that is in your hand, is to the best of its quality when it can be. So UPLC is also ICP mass is also used for testing heavy metal. If you're in California, you know about Prop 65. Heavy metal testing is required in California. Heavy metal is not required, or testing result is not required for other part of the state. But to us, we are first and foremost operating in California, but we also feel like heavy metal is extremely important. Because heavy metal, as you may know, it can cause cancers or birth defect. And with the way that our society is changing, the soil is heavily contaminated with heavy metal. So these are the 4 things that we test for: lead, arsenic, mercury, and cadmium, to ensure that it meets the standards of US pharmacopoeia under a certain level. I get questions like this a lot. How come you can't have a heavy metal with 0? Well, I wish I can too, but unfortunately it's not possible because our soil is contaminated, but there is a safe level of standards that it needs to adhere by for your herbs, for your products. It needs to follow under certain guidelines and certain what we call the ppm. So this is something you need to check for the herbal products that you're taking. Does the manufacturer or the vendor that work with, the vendor of these distributors that work with, test for heavy metal in these herbal products? You don't want to be congesting large amount of heavy metal that's harmful to your body when you're taking these herbs. You want to make sure that you get the most and the most safest out of the herbs, despite, yes, there may be some, but it's a safe level. And this sheet summarizes the standards around the world. Other than cadmium, you can see US has the lowest standards or the most strictest standards with lead, arsenic, and mercury. I see a question coming in. How long does... Yes.
Oh, sorry, you read it. Go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. How long do KPC herb last? There is a best by date on the bottle. How long should we expect full strength of the herb past that date? Great question, Dickie. So KPC herbs last 4 years. So we have something called the stability test. So we know it's stable and it has its full efficacy for 4 years. After that, we don't recommend taking the herbs. Just like any food product, there is an expiration date. Vice versa, we have an expiration date. And we consistently and constantly test our products for stability to ensure that during this 4 year, you get the full efficacy of the herbs. Great question. If you have questions, please do interrupt me and ask. That's what I'm here for. So heavy metal, you have these standards. And we ship, I'm showing you this because we ship to obviously US. We also ship to Europe, Australia, Israel, Singapore, and Malaysia. And that's what makes KP one of the top exporter, if not the top exporters in the world, because our testing standards are so stringent and we meet these standards around the world. Next slide. Pesticide residual testing. So why is this important? Again, this is a test that is actually not required, and many companies don't test for pesticide residual. So pesticide residual means after you clean the herbs or wash the herbs, how much pesticides can you get out? And again, as more and more people are demanding herbal products, demanding natural products, farmers are at an ever increasing pressure to grow herbs faster in a larger quantity. And of course, the quality of it has to be there. So the problem with spraying heavy amounts of pesticides is evident. It's almost unavoidable. But the partners that we work with, the vendors that we work with, we visit them on a yearly basis to make sure that they're not spraying unnecessary amount of pesticides on these herbs that we're using, because we don't want our consumers or practitioners to be giving their patients herbs that are full with pesticides. Without experience, there's about 504 different compounds of pesticides that we test for. And given our high level of experience that we have in testing pesticides, we have also made huge amounts to utilize 2 of these different types of machines to test for pesticides, because different types of pesticides have different types of chemical compounds that can be extracted out only by a certain type of machines. I also get asked this question a lot and said, well, then is your product organic? The short answer to that is no, our product is not organic. But the way that we test our products, the way that we clean our product, the way that our vendor grows a product, the product is as good as organic. A product is labeled organic because the farmers has paid for a USDA organic certification. So someone has to go out there to investigate to ensure that certain pesticides are not used or certain fertilizers are not used. But that only adds on the cost to the consumer, because those certifications are not cheap, are costly. And it's also really almost impossible, given the fact we carry 900 different products or herbs that we have. Not all of these herbs are able to be grown organically. So unfortunately, we don't. But if you are looking for a custom production of organic products, we can certainly do it. However, at the same time, we do test for pesticides, and we do have a strict level of pesticide residuals that we can have or not have before we filter these herbs for next step of processing or to be made into our final products. Microbio testing is the standard testing that all vendors should be testing for, or the vendors that you partner with. These are like E. coli, salmonellas, and the last one I can never pronounce, but these microbiome counts are important and mole counts are important because it can be very harmful. And this is just like food product. Any food product needs to be tested for this. So does herbs. So this is a basic test that you should ask if your vendors are testing for. So next slide is going to talk about aflatoxin. So aflatoxin is actually not tested on all the herbs. And I say that lightly because some herbs does not naturally have aflatoxin. So it's not like we don't want to test aflatoxin on all the herbs, but some herbs just don't have this aflatoxin issues. So testing the herbs that does not naturally have aflatoxin is counterintuitive. But with our experiences that we have, especially with our 5 generations of experience that we have with testing and herbs, we know specifically which herbs have aflatoxin. And aflatoxin can actually be really harmful and toxic for the bodies. And you can actually die from it if it's not prescribed accurate, or actually if it's taken. So so make sure that the products that you have does not have aflatoxin in it. If you are concerned about it, make sure your vendors or the partners or the practitioners you work with give you a testing result to show that aflatoxin is taken into account and tested. But again, not all herbs have aflatoxin. So you need to know exactly which herbs have aflatoxin to be able to request for that information, because the manufacturer may not have it because the herb does not have it. Aristotic acid is also another another acid that we test on certain herbs like mutong. Again, this is aristotic acid only exists in certain herbs. It doesn't exist in all of the products or all of the herbs. And again, it's through experiences, through many testings and trials that we have figured out which specific type of herbs contains aristotic acid and which does not. So these last 2 testing that I have mentioned are testings that manufacturers needs to perform, but they may or may not perform on all of the herbs, and they probably don't because, again, some herbs just naturally does not have aristotic acid or aflatoxin. So with all this, you might be saying, well, okay, great, you have all these testing, I want to see a certificate of it. So this is what we call the certificate of analysis. Again, there are still misconceptions sometimes with the herbal industry. I still hear sometimes like, oh, it's just a big cooking pot that you throw all the herbs in and you don't really know what's in it. Herbal industry and manufacture of herbs has grown and also has been very different. And obviously, I am proud to say KPC is a forefront of that in testing herbs and ensuring the products that we give to our patients or the products that our consumers are taking are not just leaf and branches. Right. There's a saying in saying it's all the brown stuff. Yes, you're right. They all look similar color. They're all brown. But that's why it's so important to have TLC testing, to have HPLC testing, to have all these chemical analysis and testing go into it. And with a certificate analysis like this, that shows you what type of testing has been done on the products that you're taking, the result of it, and the specification of it. This is a short presentation that I'm going over. If you have more questions about specifically what tests that we do, or more question about the compounds that we do, for sure to reach out to me and ask. So that's the end of our presentation. Let me know, Natasha, does anybody have questions?
Hi, Rosemary. That was wonderful. I learned so much. And currently we don't have any questions coming in, but I don't even know where to begin with questions, to be honest. You went over so much important information that I personally couldn't even have imagined the process of it all. So it's really wonderful to hear just the history of KPC. I mean, 4 generations now. That's amazing. And you're part of that.
Yes, it's interesting to be coming back because I used to be in the IT industry. Let's see, Dr. Cheng, do you have anything you want to add that I may have missed?
Yeah, very interesting because from this presentation, we understand and other people, they try to introduce their products. I have this product, I have that product, but entire presentation for our company, KPC here, we only talk about how to do the quality control. Yeah, we do have over 300 formulas. We do have over 400 single herbs. We treating every single batch of the formula the same way. So that's the reason we are the pretty good company, I have to say that, and pretty sincere for every procedure we do. And we don't try to do everything, just not doing the kitchen work. So that's why use our products very safe.
And
Yes.
Dr. Shin, you actually mentioned something I actually forgot to say. Some companies do what they call a blanket CLA. And what blanket CLA means is, let's say for every 10 batches I produce, I will draw one at random and I'll test. But when you ask me for certificate analysis, you'll hear my team or myself ask and said, can you give me the batch number? The reason we ask for batch number is our certificate analysis is for each batch. It's not a blanket CLA.
That's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. And I saw a question come in from Diane. Diane, you asked a great question. What binder is used for your granules? Great question. We use the non-GMO potato starch for some of our formulas. Some we just use chopped up very, 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 very fine herbs. It depends on what. I'll give you an example. Dazao is not possible to do that granule without using non-GMO potato starch. And that's because dazao is very sticky, sweet. So you needed that to be able to form that granulation. Some company use dextrin, which I would be cautioned because dextrin is essentially sugar. So that's a great question that you should be asking when you use the herbs. Ask the company what binder is behind, what binder do you use, so that you know what else you're taking in addition to the herbs itself.
Wonderful question. Thank you. And if you have any more questions, please submit them and let me check our Facebook page because we're also live on Facebook. No questions there. Wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining us today. If you would like to see KPC back with us, which I'm sure you would, let us know what topic or what questions you would like them to address. And we'll definitely have Rosemary and Dr. Cheng back with us. And thank you ladies for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for supporting FASOMA. And if you are out of state, thank you for supporting your state association. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good night.